Okay, another classic epic home studio setup, studio tour video. It's Monday, if you guys didn't know. These videos come out on this channel every single Monday. We've got a bunch more in the pipeline coming soon and some other very exciting things. So if you're not subscribed, hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, smash the like button, all that stuff. Anyway, today I'm gonna go check out my friend Jim Daneker's home studio, and he is just a ridiculously talented pianist, keyboard, synthesizer aficionado, very talented producer, musician, composer. He also created his own sample product for MainStage. I'm sure some of you musicians use MainStage if you play live. He has his own product for MainStage called Backstage Pass. So cool. He basically took all the classic and like best sounds from all the biggest records, remade them using that gear through the gear that was used on the records, like the Neves and the process through the effects and the reverbs and stuff, and created those as presets for MainStage. It's called Backstage Pass. If you guys want to check that out, I'm going to put all of his links down in the description. Give him a follow. He also has a YouTube channel where I'm nudging him to crank out some more videos. So let's give him some motivation. Go subscribe to his channel, watch his videos. He's going to be putting up a lot of cool stuff on keyboards and synthesizers. I know that you like keyboards and synthesizers, and I don't do a lot of that stuff over here. So go give him a subscription. Follow him on Instagram. Check out his website. If you're interested in the Backstage Pass product, check it out at backstagepass.store. Nobody's sponsoring this video. This is just me being pumped about it. It sounds really cool to use in the studio as well. Go support him, support the people who are awesome. I'm going to tell you one more time, make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell, and then just tap that like button. If you're tired of me selling it, please go down into the comments and tell me whatever you need to tell me. I want to hear it all. Let me know what you guys think of Jim's studio. It's in a bonus room in his house, which is so cool, and he did such a fantastic job of making a wild system between the 5 million keyboards he's got in there, but it looks great. Jim, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for watching. We're now probably at 45,000 or something like that subscribers. I just am very thankful for you. There's going to be some really fun stuff I'm going to be doing over the next month, which involves me doing some traveling. So stay tuned. That's it. I don't have anything else to say. So now I'm going to do this, and we're going to be there in one. So is this like a master bedroom?
In a normal house, this would probably be the bonus room.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because the garage is on
yeah, we're on top of the garage.
It looks like you got a couple synths here.
Just a few. I think we've cut down to, I think it's 15 now. Just the essentials. I've kind of made a rule where if I'm going to bring something in, it has to have some kind of unique identity that's different than everything else.
It's such a comfortable room. The first thing that stands out to me, for whatever reason, is the colors, and then this treatment. Look at this. Is it crown molding? Mm-hmm. And are there lights above it too?
Yeah, there's like an LED rope light up there. Long story short, it's all leftovers from my previous studio, the house I was in last. The aesthetic is important to me. I want to feel inspired because I'm in here every day. Definitely brought some color swatches and painted it some lighter colors, but still warm. You know, I'm a big fan of reds and browns, but as far as the treatment, like all the cloud that I built, that's all leftovers. It's all crown molding from my previous studio that I never ended up using. And 2 years ago, I kind of redid some stuff, and I put the Tennessee barn wood up, because ultimately I would love to be in a cabin somewhere out in the woods.
There's mirrors behind the panels, I just noticed.
Yep. So Carl Tatz does his rooms. You've probably done a few. I got the idea from him. He basically does the mirror thing on the walls. Now, visually, it makes the room look a lot bigger than it is. And if I were to finish this, what I would do is build the wood frames. I don't like the edges of the panels. They're just cloth. Yeah, they just don't look great. So I'd love to actually hide that by building some nice wood frames and putting light strips in there. The panels are extremely absorptive, and then in between them with the mirrors, it keeps things live. I went maybe a little overboard. I really did a lot of measuring so that wherever there's a mirror, on the opposite side of the wall, there's absorption. Yeah.
So these are all, what is it, G and K? GK acoustics?
GIK, I don't know how you say it, GIK acoustics. I used to make all my own stuff. I built the cloud, I made that myself. I didn't want to make 22 panels. I didn't have the time. So I bought them, and these are actually really nice because they kind of get into bass trap territory because they're deep enough. They've got an air cavity behind them, and I actually left about 1 inch behind them so, low end can get back there. resonate the
Very
panels,
cool.
and they're not just the typical 2-inch panel that's really going to
Sure.
only give you mid and high end absorption. They get down pretty low.
I see you have some back here in this little vocal booth as well that you made.
Most of the wood trim in here, it's all just the cheapest pine you can get. But I like it rustic. I don't like it really smooth and
Right.
like a lot of studios. It's oak and everything is real super smooth. I love that. Again, I'd love to be in a cabin.
Yeah.
So, and then the stain is called Bombay Mahogany. I forget who makes it. I've used it on pretty much everything. All of my custom stuff I did on my Argosy workstation. There's a couple different shades, but like even these wood pieces around the studio, most of it is that Bombay Mahogany. It just, it comes across, it gives you that red without being like bright red. You
Right,
know? It's
yeah.
just got a nice look to it. It's warm and inviting. And
So how long did it take you to put this room together?
when I moved in, the first thing was building that cloud. I had to do that before I moved anything in. Really didn't take long. Building the cloud, I basically did that in probably 2 days.
Okay, so what is it that you're doing in here?
Obviously, keyboard player. There's been a lot of things, anything from film scoring and commercial music, doing some covers actually, but doing them in a film trailer style. So like taking a song that was big in the 80s and making it sound like it's an epic film trailer. The other big thing, besides just producing the occasional album project, which I don't do a lot of that anymore. I've gotten very picky about that. Designing sounds. About a year and a half ago, I came out with a main stage expansion for live keyboard players, which is based on my touring rig that I've used over the years with a guy named Michael W. Smith. So I've done sound design for 2 decades, and people would ask if I would ever consider selling these sounds and marketing them. And I never did because I never had the time. Let's see, I guess it was 2019, we had a big open hole in our tour schedule, and around the same time I found that there were 3 or 4 companies doing really well making these main stage expansions. Main stage is, think of it as it's a virtual keyboard rig that can be anything you want it to be. It's also for guitar players too, but it's, instead of having to, you know, back in the old days when we would tour, I would have physical keyboards, and you would depend on the sounds that are in those keyboards. Well, nowadays with sample libraries and virtual instruments being so good, now you can just take one keyboard controller, and it can be, you know, even a cheap fill in the blank M Audio or, you know, whatever. Now I can show up anywhere and use any controller, and I've got all of my high-end custom sounds. Everything right now is, the website's called backstagepass.store. It's a small family of things right now. There's Backstage Pass itself, which is the meat and potatoes stuff I was telling you about. Then there's DX Streams, which just came out, and then a dedicated high-end acoustic piano. One of my good friends, ANDREWMASTERS, is one of Nashville's best keyboard players, session players. He's got a Yamaha C7 in his studio that has MIDI. And so he's been able to, he's deep sampled it several times over the years. And so I kind of took his latest version. We worked together on creating an optimized version for this platform.
If I go and buy it, do you have like a channel with information on it?
It's all on the backstagepass.store.
That's awesome. All right, well, everybody go check out all his links for that stuff if you're interested in it. I'll put all of them in the description and also give you a follow. Let's start with the desk. Tell me about this desk.
It's just an Argosy, I think it's called a Dual 15K. I got it in like 1999, I think. Back in the day, it had, you know, if you go on Argosy's site, they've got many different versions. And it had a cutout for a keyboard. And then initially I had the taller racks that had 4 more rack spaces. I changed out the tops to, I think they call it the mastering version. I've customized it so many times over the years. I cut out the keyboard tray so that I could I built a stand underneath. I had such a heavy keyboard for years that bounced when you played it, and I didn't like that. So I built a really solid, this is not going anywhere, it's anchored to that. So it's actually not touching the Argosy at all. And then I put this on a slide out tray so that if I'm working on something other than music, I can lean in and you know, do it. Or when I'm mixing, last year I built this whole little center thing because I wanted to have my main mic pre right there so I could actually make adjustments while I'm tracking, you know, vocal, and you know, it's warm audio. I mean, they're doing a lot of...
Yeah, but these mic pre's, I shot them out with some Neves, and it was like, couldn't say which one was which.
I love the features of this one. It's really unique because everything's right here. You've got 2 front panel versions.
Did you label the buttons?
I did.
What are these limiters?
So those are Golden Age. They're LA2As in an LA3A chassis.
Whoa.
There's actually even an extra tube socket in there. So you can swap out tubes, you can do some really cool experimenting. But at the end of the day, I love the sound of them.
And then you have this, is this the X Touch? Right?
Yep, that's the X Touch standard, and then this is the X Touch Compact, which is anything but. I don't know why they call it compact. But I use this one for Logic, for any automation. This one I dedicated strictly for virtual instrument programming. There's 2 layers. You got an A and B layer. When I'm working with sample libraries, doing like film scoring stuff, it's important to have, you know, 7 or 8 different controllers, but you got 2 layers of it.
Everything must serve a purpose, I imagine, right?
Everything does.
Okay, I'm looking at 3 MacBooks.
Yes.
And then a second monitor.
That's tied to a PC down in the corner. So when I'm doing a big film scoring project, which I actually don't do a lot of those lately, I was up to 5 computers at one point, all networked through Vienna Ensemble Pro, which is, Michael Whitaker talked about that in the video you did with him. So this kind of lets you be modular. Like I've got 64 gig of RAM in here and 4 solid state drives, but it lets me, I think I forget how many instruments I've got loaded, but there's 400 or 500 instruments just in this one machine, and it's all getting piped via Ethernet into my main Mac, which is the MacBook Pro, which this one's only I think it's a 2019. Okay. I went with a laptop because I typically do a lot of touring, and I wanted to be able to take work on the road with me. When I'm home, it plugs into this little CalDigit dock, which is genius. And that little dock runs pretty much the whole studio.
It's called CalDigit?
Mm-hmm. It's called a TS3 Plus. Under here, I've got a 4-bay solid state array, which all my samples are hosted on that, my media drives. So when I come home, I literally just plug in the laptop, and then it connects to the entire studio.
I was just gonna ask about this console, but I think I just figured it out. Are all the keyboards going through that?
Yeah, it's basically a submixer, especially with some of the older synths like the DX7 and stuff like that. And this guy, Arturia, the Matrix Brute, it's analog, and it's pretty noisy. Yeah. Which is just part of the character of it. So what I do is I run all the synths pretty much into here, and then everything is gain optimized. So everything is, you know, your gain structure is set up properly. I've got noise gates on every channel so that nothing is making any hiss or noise when it's not being used. And then I'm going ADAT light pipe from here into my Apollo, which is in the rack. Yeah, so the main Apollo's down there. I never really have to touch this thing. It's really just a glorified patch bay.
Yeah.
This is the Mark II 96K version of the O2R, which still sells for about $9 grand. Found it for $500.
If I'm understanding this right, you got console, UA console. Yeah. Probably has some channels just open. You could walk up to a synth and hear it.
So I've got a dedicated send return loop set up where anything in here can get routed through my hardware chain. When I want to commit it and track it, I'll do that typically. And I've got a couple open channels on the Apollo. So the stuff I really care about, like the analog stuff, I want to get every ounce of it. I'll run it through the hardware. And
then you've got this some pedals over here. Is this for reamping?
No, so these, I'm a reverb junkie, and I've got way too many reverbs, and typically they're all in the box. But somebody, I forget what it was, well, the Big Sky, of course, is a big deal. Everybody loves the Big Sky. But the one that really got me, this maybe 2 years ago, is the Specular Tempest. For really atmospheric, dreamy stuff, I don't think I've ever heard a better reverb than that.
So if you're not using a reamp thing through it, what's it going through to come out of the interface into it?
Basically just a send return loop from the Apollo. So I've got one pair of the Apollo outputs.
Line out?
Line outs going into these EBTech line level shifter.
Oh,
They take it from -10, or from +4 balanced to -10. So that it matches the level that wants to see. Those EBTech boxes are great. They don't do anything sonically. They just convert level from unbalanced to balanced. And
so you've got like a few small guys up here. Are these that you're using often?
I had surgery on my hands a couple years ago for trigger finger. A couple decades of pounding on weighted action keyboards.
Yeah.
There's a reason to have 88 keys, weighted keys when I'm playing piano stuff. I'm a piano player. If I'm just quickly auditioning sounds and I don't want to be playing a weighted keyboard, it's just nice to have these. A controller that's ideal for me, it's this Korg D1. It's a digital piano that happens to be low profile. It's thin. The action is weighted, but it's not super heavy. So I can actually play faster stuff, like when I'm scoring, playing string parts and whatnot, but it has no pitch and mod wheels. It's just a digital piano.
Nice.
So I'm like, let me grab a little Arturia or this little Korg. I've got pitch and mod wheels right here on my desktop, so I can play from any keyboard. They all get routed into you know, Logic.
And then what's this guy? Streaming mixer.
Yeah, Roland. So yeah, it's a broadcast mixer. It takes 3 HDMI inputs from 3 cameras, or you know, whatever your sources are. It's got 2 mic pre's, and it's a switcher. You know, you can switch between any of your sources and stream straight to whatever, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I thought you were talking about the Stream Decks. Those things are absolutely bonkers. You know, they instantly change to whatever your foreground app is. When I'm in email, like I've got a button that types my email address, which is ridiculously long.
Yeah.
I never type my email address, I just hit a button.
So you've got, you know, your software kind of piped in here, and then that's also going, that's what we're seeing over here on the iPad.
What this does is it gives you hands-on control for everything you see on screen. So
you have your presets for sort of designed for the specific sound of the song.
Yep.
As a reference, and then you have the controls on the iPad.
Right. It's like having a virtual mix console right under your fingertips without having to mess with your software.
And then what's the one underneath it? Is that even more controls?
That one is for when, typically more when I'm deep into Logic for my scoring template.
What's the app?
The app is called Touch OSC, basically Tinker Toys. I mean, you can create any kind of controller, whether it's, both of these are running Touch OSC. That's the main screen for Backstage Pass. It gives me 24 program change buttons, what's called B3 Designer. I can dial in all my B3 stuff, like how much distortion I want. This is the main screen for DX Streams, and then I've got another screen for like a channel strip editor. Like this one would be for a synth, like attack, decay, sustain, release, basic envelope controls, a thing called Atmosphere, which kind of is a third hand. I can trigger a note. If I want to hold a pad sound during a transition, I can hit that and it'll hold that for me and play whatever note I specify. I just hit, say I'm in the key of F. I hit the F and then turn it on. It'll hold an F with whatever pad sound I've got called F.
Interesting.
Yeah, the worship guys love that. Like worship teams, that's a big thing for them.
That's awesome.
So yeah, you can do anything with Touch OSC.
All right, I want to ask about how everything is being held and fitting into here. This is pretty impressive, and on the back side of this, let me see if we can see it from under here. This is hardcore and also very meticulously neat.
The stands, they are a company called Standtastic makes these. It's called either the 102 or the 103 KS. Only difference is the amount of tiers that they have, but you can add tiers. So like in this case, I got 4 on this one, but you can add as many tiers as you want. I like the really clean look. All I see is keyboards. So they kind of look like they're floating in midair, and you can angle them however you want. They're extremely sturdy. So like nothing bounces. They got a good low profile, plenty of room underneath for pedals or whatever. Like this one over here, I mean, I've got some racks under there. These other ones, like those are just little things I found on Amazon. They're like 60 bucks. There's just 2 of them here. Yeah, they're super solid. They're welded steel. I wanted this one to be kind of on its own and featured, and just be able to wheel over here and mess with this guy. This guy, the OB6, I wanted this right there with it because these are the 2 probably top dogs as far as analog synths in here.
And then for monitors, you have, I see these are the Atom, what are these, TS8?
T8V. So I wanted to be able to hear in stereo, and I wanted something as full range as possible because I'm used to these monster PMCs, which are ridiculous. Okay, so super fast keyboard tour. This would be the wall of 80s. These 2 here, the DX7 Yamaha and the Roland D50, these 2 synths are probably responsible for pretty much every pop hit that you heard between 1983 and 1989. Super, super iconic. Another favorite though, which is kind of a sleeper, was Ensoniq stuff, the VFX, which was a lot like the D50. Spare DX7 for parts. Arturia Matrix Brute, one of the best analog mono synths out there, I think. It just has a really wicked sound. The analog effects on it are really good. When I want like an arpeggiated sequence, I go to this guy a lot. Roland System 8. This thing is all things vintage Roland. The Jupiter 8, the Juno 106. Like if you wanted to score Stranger Things, this is the synth you would get. It's one of the best modeling synths out of the last 10 years, I think, and it just does any of those Roland iconic sounds. The ASM Hydra synth, this thing is unlike anything else out there. It's got polyphonic aftertouch, which was unheard of for the longest time. It's got this long ribbon controller, and it's it just does some really, really creative sound design that you can't really do with anything else. Sequential Pro 3. This is a lot like the Matrix Brute. It's a mono synth primarily, but it's got real VCO oscillators. So borders on Moog territory. You could do some mini Moog type stuff with this, but it does some things that nothing else does. It's got a couple different filter models, the Oberheim filter, the Prophet filter. So all in one box, super, super creative. Below that, one of my favorites of all time, the Access Virus TI. There's more power in that synth than probably anything on the market, and the technology's 20 years old. It's, gosh, techno, like EDM, like any of that kind of super, super arpeggiated creative stuff. It's lush and beautiful. Another sequential piece, the Prophet Rev 2, which is a different flavor than their other stuff. It uses DCOs, so the raw tone is a little bit, I would say, generic, which is not necessarily a bad thing. What it makes up for in other ways is crazy modulation routings, being able to do some really cool sound sculpting that you can't do with the others. And it's got a really unique flavor. Behringer Poly D. This is my mini Moog stand-in. I've done a lot of testing between this and a real Moog. This is a Moog, the soul of a Moog. It sounds insane. When you want that big fat Moog low end, this is a great option.
And this is Behringer Poly D.
Behringer Poly D, yep. It's got the Roland Juno Chorus chips in it, and an analog distortion. So kind of a little bit of a hybrid, but really, really cool. Core Wave State. This thing is like, if you want to score a movie, you could do it with this one keyboard. Like really cool, evolving soundscape type stuff. Really evolving atmospheric stuff. I haven't heard anything like that. That's another favorite. And last but not least, the Sequential Prophet 5. This thing is kind of responsible for much of what we know about synthesizers. It came out in 1979, and the architecture of this is pretty much what every synthesizer since has followed. Subtractive, analog synthesis. It's got 2 oscillators, a mixer section, filter, amplifier. This is this is where it all started. It was the first programmable synthesizer that was analog, but that let you have presets. And nothing sounds like this. It just sounds insanely good. And then its cousin, the Sequential OB6, which is really modeled after the Oberheim stuff. Very similar in some ways, but what this is known for are the filters. Yeah, so when you want that ridiculous, just fatter than should be legal.
Is this being used as a controller as well?
Yeah, the Roland Phantom 7. This one, kind of along with the System 8, just recently they ported a lot of their iconic models like the Jupiter 8, Juno 106, JX8P. They put those models in here now. So this, I take this out on tour. When I go out on tour sometimes, this is my main controller. So it's got ridiculous sounds in it. It sounds gorgeous.
Roland Phantom.
Yep, the Roland Phantom, but I love the action on it. It's got a nice synth action. It's all routed through Logic. So when I'm working on the Prophet 5, if I'm listening through these monitors, I'll typically be playing from this and tweaking from here. Whatever is my destination synth, I can be on pretty much any other in the room and play what I'm wanting to hear.
Where'd you get this thing? This little table for the laptop?
I made it. I've always got pine sitting around down in my garage. So actually just last week, I use this for a lot of different things. It's just a quick lock locator stand. If you search for quick lock locator stand, I forget what the model name is, but I love it because you can pull it apart. You can widen this. So I just made a tabletop, but I've used it for music stands. I use coffee stands. Yeah.
And then what are these speaker stands? Did you make these too?
I just got these, man, Amazon. I'm always on Amazon. They're $100. They're called Rockville. Here, I actually just got the smaller ones here. I was gonna put up, so it's this, but in a taller version.
Okay, yeah.
They're also fillable. You can fill them with sand.
Okay, so they're dense.
So you can really make them dense if you want, which is important.
You have like the keyboard stand here, but then you have the wood that you've put on top. So it's kind of like a nice table.
Yeah, the reason for that was because these 2 synths by themselves were too narrow. And I'm like, well, I kind of want them next to each other. So yet another DIY.
Nice little adjustable light here.
Which I'm always moving. Yeah, it's like if I want to work with the Prophet, just kind of throw it over that way. And
you got this John Williams things over here. What's this?
I did my Life Dream back in 2016. I took a year or 2 off from everything else, did a Kickstarter, and did a big cinematic instrumental record. hired an orchestra and did it right. John Williams is my lifetime hero. When I grew up listening to his film music, he came to Nashville and conducted the Nashville Symphony a couple of years ago. And so I'd love to have met him, but it didn't work out. So I sent him my album when it was done with a thank you note, just thanking him for years and decades of inspiration. I just said, I don't want anything from you. I just, here's a copy. If you don't do anything with it, fine, but I just want to say thank you. And he sent me, he signed the cover of my album, sent it back to me. And so at least I know it was probably on his coffee table. Who knows?
Yeah. I like that you took these back corners and then you made it into like a nice little bookshelf that you have software stuff in there.
Yeah, just yeah. My parents gave me some old family furniture, and that piece goes back decades, and so I'm just using it for whatever. But stuff that my daughter made me over the years, and my Wyatt Earp replica, whatever model it is, from Tombstone, which is probably my favorite movie.
For anyone who's curious, they can go, remind me the website again.
Backstagepass.store.
Check out all the stuff that he has on there. He's worked tremendously hard, and it would be such a value for, I'm sure, a ton of people watching this. And then do you have like Instagram and other stuff?
Instagram, just Jim Daneker, Daneker.
In the description, click the show more. All of his links are in there for the website. Give him a follow. This is very creative and well done. So thank you again.
Appreciate it.
All right, I'll get out of here. Go follow him, hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next one.